Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for the second part of our story. Let's jump right back in. She was outrageous, funny, and witty. When we got up in my big old truck and drove over to her house, we couldn't control the laughter. First, she'd start, and then I'd start, and the two of us could hardly stop laughing long enough to draw in a decent breath. Please stop it, Emily. I'm about to bust a gut, and it's starting to hurt me. Lucky you, Jake. 'Cause I just went and peed myself. I thought she was kidding at first, but she wasn't, and soon the two of us were rolling down our windows and laughing even harder. I could tell that she was real embarrassed about doing that, so I didn't make any fun of her for it. When we got to her house, I parked out in front, and she told me to wait right there and ran into her house. She lived out off of a back road about 2 miles north of my house. Her father was a chemist or something at a big drug company, and they lived pretty well. Her mother didn't work outside the home at all. Emily had 3 sisters, all younger than her. She'd had a brother 2 years older than her, but he died of a fever when he was 9 years old. Her house had a big piano in the parlor, and the lid was always down, and it had at least 30 pictures of her brother on top of it, from when he was a baby until just before he got sick and died. Emily always referred to it as Evan's shrine. She came running out about 15 minutes later, all cleaned up and changed into a summer dress. She brought out some disinfectant cleaner and a towel and washed off the truck seat where she'd sat. After it was clean, she hopped back in and sat down again after putting the towel and disinfectant out on the lawn first. I'm real sorry about peeing in your truck, Jake. You must really think I'm pretty crude. No, Emily, it's okay. I've got 2 sisters, and I've actually made both of them laugh so hard they accidentally peed their pants before. It happens, don't worry about it. You probably made the inside of this truck smell better anyway with that cleaner you used. That stuff is seriously strong. You still deserve something for not making fun of me when it happened, and for letting me have so much fun at your expense tonight. So I'll let you pick your reward. You can either get a big long hug, a fun secret handshake I'll make up on the spot, or you can pick a song, and I'll sing it badly but with heart. Which one do you choose? She tried to smile after saying that, but I could tell she was a little nervous. I guess I'll take the hug, I said, since that means I get to hold you close too. She moved over next to me, and I gave her my best, most sincere hug. We stayed like that for a while, and it honestly felt nice, warm, friendly, and kinda special. If the porch light outside hadn't suddenly flipped on, we probably would have stayed like that even longer. We let go, and she gave me a huge beaming smile before getting out of the truck and closing the door behind her. She leaned in the window and joked, "I'll probably be dreaming about this tonight." She blushed a little as she said it, and I probably did too. Then she grabbed the towel and the cleaner and ran back inside her house. I drove down the road for a while, then pulled off to the side, stepped out to stretch, and took a moment to clear my head before heading home. Cousin Bill had enough cut and seasoned firewood over at his farm to make at least 50 truckloads for me. I went over the next day and made him a deal for all of it, making him accept an extra $3 a cord over his asking price. Teresa was pregnant with their second child, and Bill was already worried that he wouldn't be able to make enough money in the coming winter to feed the family and still make his payments for the farm and the taxes on the land. We set up a payment schedule that guaranteed him that he'd make it through the winter in good shape and still have enough left over to bid on some bigger jobs that he wanted to try for after we shook hands on the deal. I gave Bill $300 that I just borrowed from my father as a first payment on our deal. I could tell that it meant a lot to him that he'd once again have some money in reserve. We both agreed that he'd cut and store another 600 cords of hardwoods for me for the next year in addition to what I'd already bought from him, and at the same price we just agreed to. Whenever I was ready to make another trip to sell some wood, I'd just call Bill up and tell him I'd be over his place after he got off of work at the base. He'd bring 2 or 3 of his crew home with him, and the 2 of us would sit around drinking the beer I'd had Bill buy, and that we shared with the crew while they loaded up my truck. Sometimes Teresa would come out and sit with us, looking so much happier and relaxed now that Bill wasn't always so worried about finances. She told me that Bill went out by himself lots of nights after work and cut wood into lengths just to make sure he'd have enough seasoned wood ready so that I could get prime prices for it when the time came to load it up. The man in New Haven that my grandfather had introduced me to had called a few times, asking if I could move up the deliveries because his customers were so pleased with the quality of the wood they had been telling their neighbors about it, and now those neighbors were calling, asking if they could get the same thing. He mentioned he'd take 100 cords if I could deliver that much before winter. I agreed to deliver an additional 12 full loads, totaling 144 cords, before Thanksgiving if he would pay an extra $3 per cord. I explained that I needed to pay more myself to get the best seasoned hardwoods and to ensure it was delivered on time. He hesitated at first, but after I stood firm on the price, he agreed. I completed the contract before September, and he wanted another 200 cords after that. However, I didn't want to rely solely on one client, so I told him I had other orders to fill but would contact him if any cancellations happened or if I could find more quality stock. I started reaching out to businesses in the home fuel industry near large population centers, arranging deliveries. The owners almost always asked for a load to be delivered, and if the wood was as good as I claimed, they would buy it at the price I set. I never had a business owner refuse to buy the wood on the spot, though a few tried to negotiate on the price. Once, a man near Hartford tried to downplay the quality of the wood to lower the price. I acted like I was inspecting it again and then told him it was actually of even higher quality than I had thought, so I needed to raise the price by $1.50 per cord. It only added $18 to the total, but the feeling of having to pay more convinced him not to try to negotiate with me again. I was getting along really well with Emily. We went out around the area, trying new places to eat each time because I didn't want to return to places we had visited recently. One night, I watched as she and a waitress, a woman in her 40s, had a conversation about how frustrating it was when men didn't give back the attention they expected. Emily shared that if it weren't for her neighbor, Sue, who was incredibly kind, she might have felt very frustrated. I left a small tip, but Emily gave the waitress a piece of paper with Sue's phone number when we left the restaurant. Emily told me the number was for that Catholic school. She thought the waitress might find someone there to talk to about her frustrations. We were parked in front of her house again. I had told her I'd be heading to Hartford the next day and wouldn't be able to see her until I returned. By now, we'd gone out to dinner a dozen times, and aside from some deep conversations, we had only kissed. She had shared in great detail all the things she hoped to do in the future, but we hadn't yet crossed that line. I started to wonder if we'd ever move beyond holding hands, kissing, and talking. Then one evening, she surprised me by asking, "Jake, would you consider taking me with you to Hartford? I've never been there before. I've never really been anywhere except for family vacations." I was caught off guard by her request. Despite how she had talked, I didn't expect her to want to do something like that. I had assumed she was all talk and no action. What would your parents think about you doing something like that? They'd hate it. My mother would be scandalized, and my father would have conniption fits. I'm a grown woman, though, and I'm going to be doing more of the things I want to do from now on. I'd only do it if your parents say it's okay. I figured I had her there and that we'd finish that particular topic. She surprised me, though, by jumping out of the truck and telling me to come inside with her. It was only about 9 o'clock, but that was late for a person to bring in company in those days. "Daddy, Mom, Jake has something he needs to ask you." I had followed her into the living room, and Mr. and Mrs. Dale were sitting on the sofa together. Mrs. Dale with curlers in her hair and wearing a blue, oversized bathrobe. Their 3 youngest daughters were lying around in their pajamas on the rug in front of the television, but had all turned around to stare at me when their sister had spoken. I was looking over at Emily, wondering if she'd lost her mind or was just enjoying watching me squirm. I'd had about enough of her one-sided teasing and thought I'd give her back a little of her own. "Evening, folks. Well, Mr. Dale, the thing is that Emily's tired of teasing me with her promises and listening to me begging for more. We've done just about everything the 2 of us can do in that little truck cab, but I'm just too tall to go all the way in it. She wanted me to ask you if it's okay to take her into her bedroom right now and finish up what we got started out in my truck. I'd sure appreciate it if you'd let us, because I don't know how much more of her teasing I can take. Don't worry none about her getting pregnant because she says she's in the safe part of her cycle right now." I kept a straight face the whole way through. I thought Mrs. Dale was going to faint, and the 3 girls looked like they'd all swallowed their own tongues. They were so shocked. Emily had turned such a shade of red that she looked like a tomato. "Sure, Jake, you go right on ahead. I'm sure she's been asking for it for a while, and I'm glad to see that somebody is going to give it to her." "Daddy, how could you?" Emily fled from the living room and ran and locked herself in the bathroom. Mr. Dale spent the next 5 minutes getting yelled at and slapped in the arms by his enraged wife, and the girls were all talking at once and wondering what the hell they were supposed to make of all this. He and I were both laughing, though I admit I was really relieved that he hadn't gotten up and started hitting me. I hardly knew Emily's father, but I figured Emily wasn't that different acting at home than she was with me. It turned out that I was right and that she'd been saying outrageous things to her parents for years. Finally, he told his wife to shut up and sit down and told his 3 youngest daughters to get on off to bed. He let me out through the front door and walked out to my truck with me. "Jake, I sure want to thank you for tonight. That's the first time I've ever seen anyone get the best of Emily in a verbal exchange. I don't know how you came up with that particular idea in the first place, but seeing the look on her face as you were speaking was a treat, an absolute treat. It's a memory I'll treasure for the rest of my days. I think you better take off now, though, because it won't be long before she recovers and thinks of something to say that will top you. I'd like to just go to bed one night knowing she is as flustered as she's made me over these last few years. Good night, son. It's been a pure pleasure." I got back from Hartford late and went straight home to get some sleep. I now had almost $3,000 saved up just from 4 months of wood deliveries. I'd paid my father back and had my Uncle Don looking out for a second truck for me. My old truck had a 28-foot bed, and it was just about ideal size-wise. If I could get myself another truck, I was going to get Cousin Leo working for me in the fall through the spring. He was still the caddy master at the fancy club, but there wasn't any work there for him after Labor Day. He was a good driver, and I figured Chloe, his wife, could go with him on deliveries and keep everything straight as far as money and expenses was concerned. I would handle all the orders and keep everything running smooth with Bill, but I couldn't grow without a driver or two. I called Emily after I got up and had breakfast. She sounded like she was real happy to hear from me. I asked her if she was still upset about the other night, but she said she thought it was funny too, had a good cry, and stayed locked in the bathroom for over an hour. She told me that her father had taken quite a shine to me and had told her to make sure and invite me over to dinner. I told her that I'd like to do that sometime. She asked what was wrong with doing it that night, and I told her that I hadn't seen her for a while and was kind of hoping that we could spend some time together that evening. Jake, come on over for dinner tonight. We'll have time after dinner to take a walk or something and be alone together. I promise. I guess I should have known she was up to something, but I was lulled because we'd be at her house with her whole family there with us. What could she do in that setting? In any event, I agreed to go there for supper. I put on some nice clothes, and I'd even gotten a new haircut, losing the sideburns and the longish hair for a more traditional style with only a single part on the left. My father got home right before I left to go over to Emily's, and he was thrilled to see me looking like a normal person, as he put it. He had just gone over 20 years in the Navy and had started thinking about possibly retiring on half pay and doing something different with his life. Jake, come in, come in. I almost didn't recognize you with the new hair and the different clothes. Emily is in the kitchen helping her mother get dinner ready. Can I offer you a little drink before dinner? I'm having a scotch, but I can build you almost anything. I settled on a beer and thanked Mr. Dale when he brought it to me. You've got to call me Tom, Jake, I insist. So, Emily tells me you have your own business, Jake, selling firewood around the state. Can you make any money doing that, if you don't mind me asking? No, Tom, I don't mind at all. Right now, I'm only clearing about $900 a month, but I'm pretty sure I'll be adding another truck and driver soon, and then another one in the spring. I hope to be clearing at least $30,000 a year by the time I'm old enough to vote. Really? I had no idea. Emily made it sound like you were just helping out a relative temporarily, and that you planned to go on and finish your education in the fall. That's exactly what I was planning for months ago, Tom. But the opportunity arose, and I thought I'd better jump on it when I had the chance. I was planning on going to school so that I could get a nice job and make a good living to support a family. I'd want to be able to have them live in a nice house like this and wear nice clothes and have a little extra to take vacations and things like that. My mom and pop both work, and they've had to work hard just to get by and raise 4 kids. I'd like to do a little better than they have financially speaking, at least, and have enough income so that my wife could stay at home and make things better for all the family. If $30,000 a year isn't enough to do that, then I guess I'll have to hire another driver and get another truck then. Jake, I have an advanced degree and have worked 16 years for the same company, and I don't make anything near $30,000 a year. If things go according to your plans, well, 30 will be more than enough to do what you want. I'm glad we had this talk, Jake. I've come away with a vastly different impression than when we were first introduced. I think Emily is fortunate in having you pay her court. Thanks, Tom. So is it okay if I really do jump her bones? Tom broke out laughing, and he didn't stop until he had tears in his eyes and his youngest daughter came in to find out what was so funny. Emily came in then to say that dinner was ready. Their dining room was really nice. All the chairs were matching, and the table was of real wood and had a matching buffet and china closet. The place settings were very nice, and the table had a large porcelain centerpiece hand-painted with delicate roses. Emily's parents sat at the head and foot of the table, with Emily and me on the outside and the 3 younger children on the inside. There were more leaves by the sideboard, and Tom told me that the table could comfortably seat 12 and that they had that many chairs. He joked that they'd expected to have 10 children when they'd bought it. I saw his wife look in the parlor at the piano and at Evan's shrine. Dinner was beef brisket with all the trimmings. I ate a good helping and then let Emily convince me to have seconds. We had home-squeezed apple cider with dinner, and it was very cold and good. There was a peach cobbler for dessert that Emily's mother swore Emily had made herself from scratch. It was very good as well. The girls had excused themselves after they were through eating and rushed off to do their homework. When Emily got up, I stood too and thanked her mom for a lovely meal. Emily grabbed my hand and led me to the back of the house where the bedrooms were and straight into her room. At first, I thought she was just being playful again, but she closed the door behind us and gave me a kiss. Not just a casual one, but one that made it clear she wasn't joking this time. It only lasted a moment, but when it was over, I could tell something had shifted. She looked right into my eyes, then began to calmly unbutton her blouse. Once the last button was undone, she took it off and draped it over the back of her chair without a word. She unclasped her bra and set it aside too. Emily had a small frame, delicate and graceful. You're falling behind, Jake. Come on, we don't have all night, she teased, quickly slipping out of her skirt. She stood there in simple white cotton underwear, nothing fancy, but somehow it suited her perfectly. I just stood there, unsure of what to do, watching her with a mix of surprise and confusion. When she started to slip off her underwear, I realized this was more than a prank or a joke, and she turned away from me, finishing what she'd started. Once she was done, she stood there waiting. Your turn, Jake. I'm done already. Emily, don't move. Stay right there. I'll be back in a minute. I stepped out into the hallway, closing her door behind me, and went looking for Tom. I found him in the kitchen, helping his wife tidy up, stacking dishes in the sink. Tom, can I talk to you for a second? He gave me a curious look but nodded, leading me into the study where we talked earlier. What's on your mind, Jake? I hesitated. Emily's in her room right now, and while she's made it pretty clear she's testing me in some way, I don't want to overstep while I'm a guest in your home. But I think she expects me to match her boldness now. To be honest, I don't exactly mind the attention, but I thought out of respect for you, I should check in before doing or saying anything. I knew I sounded awkward, but I couldn't find a better way to say it. Tom sighed. Jake, take a moment and think this through. This is just Emily's way of getting even for the other night. She might be bold enough to act like this, but unless I've completely misjudged my daughter, she's not seriously planning to take this further, not with her whole family here in the house. I say you go back in there and call her bluff. And what if you're wrong, Tom? What if she really means it? I'm not sure I'd have the willpower to stop her if she's serious. I just wanted you to be aware of that. Tom smiled slightly. Well, let me ask you something. Do you love her? I don't know, and right now I'm not able to sit down and try to decide if I do or I don't. I like the hell out of her, and I like it when we're doing things like talking and eating together. If I don't love her right now, I probably will after. Jake, you're too damn honest for your own good. Too damn honest by far. If you get in there and she wants you to do it, then ask yourself if you could see yourself married to her someday. If your honest answer is no, then I'd appreciate it if you'd put your pecker back in your pants and go home before you do something the both of you will regret. If your answer is yes or even maybe, then I say it's balls to the walls and let the devil take the hindmost. He actually smiled then and stuck out his hand for me to shake. I took it, not unmindful of the possibility of being sucker punched, but we just shook, and I went back to her bedroom. I more than half expected her to be fully dressed again and ready to have a good laugh at my expense. When I opened the door, the light was turned off, and I heard her call my name softly and tell me to shut the door, get undressed, and get into bed, which I did. It was a while before our relationship became romantic in the fullest sense, but from the moment I slipped into bed beside her, there was a quiet, intimate connection between us in that softly lit room. We held each other gently, exploring the closeness we'd both been curious about. I noticed every little detail. Her hair, her hands, the shape of her shoulders, and somehow everything about her felt familiar and comforting to me. I'd been in her room for over an hour when I heard her mother in the hallway, her voice muffled and weary as Tom helped her to her own room for the night. Meanwhile, I was quietly fascinated by a tiny mole I'd found a few inches above her waist. A small thing, but somehow it made her smile and laugh when I made a big deal of it. I could tell she was a little nervous, though, and for a moment it seemed like she might pull away. Wanting to lighten the mood, I did my best falsetto, pretending to be a French character named Sue there to show her the wonders of the Parisian way. That broke the tension completely. She burst out laughing, and any thought of leaving disappeared. I may be bragging, but I swear we stayed up all night talking, laughing, and just enjoying being with each other. By the time we both wandered into the hallway and made our way to the bathroom, with me wearing a robe of hers that barely reached my knees, it was well past 7 o'clock in the morning. Somewhere during the night, in those quiet hours between jokes and stories, I think she told me she loved me. Later, as we were both in the shower with my arms around her, I whispered back that I loved her too. She squeezed my hands, turned around, and kissed me. But then in true Emily fashion, she stepped back dramatically, screamed playfully, and pushed me away. You're not Robert Harrington. What have you done with my Robert? By the time her mother came rushing in, pulling back the shower curtain, the two of us were doubled over laughing, teasing, and tickling each other like kids. Emily looked up at her mother's bewildered face and, without missing a beat, announced, Mommy, guess what? Jake's been here all night, and now he's leaving me for Alice and Mackenzie. Her mother's horrified expression was priceless as she hurried out, not even closing the door behind her. By then, I pretty much accepted I wasn't going to be invited back for another family dinner anytime soon, but honestly, that wasn't even my biggest concern. No, I was starting to wonder how on earth I was going to explain this whirlwind of a girl to my own parents. As it turned out, I needn't have worried. Emily was the soul of discretion until she and my mother and sisters were alone together. After that, I could hear the four of them laughing and howling and undoubtedly making jokes at my dad's and my expense. I didn't mind though, because my dad and my brother Mike and I were sitting in the kitchen having ourselves a drink or three, Mike's was grape soda though, and celebrating my engagement, my dad's retirement from the Navy, and the fact that Uncle Don had found me another surplus truck with the same exact dimensions as the other one. He was checking it out for the rest of the week, but was sure he could have it running in great condition and delivered to me for about $500 total price. My Uncle Don was a very good man, but something of a loner. Of all the family, he was the hardest to get to know, and he preferred it that way. He had 8 children left, having lost one who suffocated in an abandoned refrigerator several years before. He and my father had been in several knockdown brawls against each other many years ago, and though they treated each other civilly when it came to family gatherings, there was certainly no love lost between them. They would each do the other favors, though, in their respective areas of expertise and influence. Two of Uncle Don's sons and one of his daughters were working at Electric Boat due to my father interceding on their behalf. When one of his other sons, my cousin Danny, got into a serious scrape with the law over in New London, my father called in a lot of favors to get the case dismissed on a suddenly appearing technicality. Uncle Don could be counted on to assist us with anything involving trucks or automobiles. He was also someone who would help any time there was heavy manual labor to be done and could produce any or all of his sons on a moment's notice. He was also good with most electrical wiring problems around a house. When I got over to New London the next week to pay Uncle Don and pick up the truck, I was surprised to see cousin Danny there with him. My father and I got out of the car and walked over to them standing by the truck. It looked better than my other one, and I noticed right away that the stake bed looked almost new. "It looks great, Uncle Don. I only hope it runs as good as it looks." "It should, Jake. The motor has low miles and I just checked everything out, and it all looks and runs perfect. It should give you good service for a while." I gave him the money and asked him if he was sure he'd be coming out okay on the deal. "I'm doing good, Jake. Don't worry about that." I saw him looking over at my dad, and it looked like he had something he wanted to either tell or ask him, so I moved over where Danny stood, and the two of us went over to the back of the truck to let them talk in private. They talked for about 5 minutes, and then I saw my father heading over towards Danny and me. "Jake, go talk to your Uncle Don for a few minutes, will you? I need to talk with your cousin here about some business." I went over to Uncle Don, and he was looking back at my father and cousin Danny with a very worried expression on his face. My Uncle Don wasn't normally much of a worrier. If he was worried, then it was time for the rest of us to be plain scared. After a long 10 minutes, during which time Uncle Don kept looking at them, my father and Danny returned. "Don, I'll do the best I can for him, but I just can't make you any promises. If he's telling us the truth, then maybe I can help him. If he's bullshitting us, then I won't be able to do anything at all." My uncle nodded, and he and my father shook hands. I got in the truck and drove it back over to Groton and parked it in the same empty lot where I kept my other truck. When I got back in the house, my mother and father were sitting at the supper table. My mom was visibly upset and looked like she'd been crying. My father pointed to my chair, and I sat down, not looking forward to hearing this news, whatever it might be. "Your cousin might be in a lot of trouble, Jake. You remember a couple of months back when that post office over in Niantic was robbed and that clerk got shot and almost killed? Well, the police caught one of the two guys that pulled that robbery, and now he's saying that Danny was the other guy with him. Danny says it's all lies and that the guy has it in for him for something that happened before. Your Uncle Don is hiding him until I can ask around and see if we can surrender him somewhere where he'll be safe until we can get this thing cleared up. The thing is that you know the guy they got for the robbery, Evan Bradley, and your cousin Bill knows him a lot better than you do. Don wants the two of you to go up to Niantic and see if you can get in to visit him and ask him straight up whether it was Danny in it with him or not. The other thing is that this is in the federal jurisdiction. As long as that clerk doesn't die, you can tell Evan that if he is mistaken about Danny being the other guy, and if that clerk doesn't die, maybe he'll only get 3 years in the federal penitentiary right up in Massachusetts. You can also tell him if he continues to tell lies about your cousin, he'll do at least 20 years in Kansas, and that's if the clerk lives. You gonna help us all out here, Jake?" "Sure, Pop. What did you think?" "I knew you'd do what has to be done, Jake. Just like you always do." Emily and I went out that night and had a nice supper up on the Old Post Road at a tavern with great chowder and all-you-can-eat fried clams. She noticed right away how quiet I was being and asked me what's wrong. I told her a little about Danny's problems but not about what my dad had asked me and Bill to do. I took her home, and the two of us walked back to her room and I spent the night. Tom had already told me that old saying about closing the barn door after the horse had escaped and just asked that the two of us be circumspect in front of the little girls. I was trying, but Emily must have thought she was a racehorse trying to bring home the winner at Churchill Downs or something. When she finished up with me, I felt like I had spur marks on my sides. I liked sleeping with her though. She was like a furnace at night, and I held her tight and stole as much warmth from her as I could. I got up at 5 o'clock and snuck back out of the house while everyone slept. I picked up Bill out at his farm, and we drove over to Niantic. They were holding Evan in the old jail, keeping him separate from the other prisoners and detainees. Bill and I got in to see him with almost no problems at all. I gave the marshal at the door a card my father had given me, and he went in and made a phone call and then came out and let us into the cell that Evan was kept in. That whole place smelled to high heaven. I let Bill start off with the talking since he and Evan were pretty good pals for a lot of years. Evan got into other things like robbery and drugs, and he and Bill had parted ways when Evan had stopped being reliable. They shot the breeze for about 5 minutes before Bill waved me over. I'd spent the time waiting, trying to hold my breath against the stink. I didn't know how Evan could stand being there for an hour, let alone the 2 weeks or so he said he'd been there. "Hi, Jake. Long time between visits." "Hi, Evan. I only just found out you were in here. My old man sent me over to make sure you're okay and that they're treating you fair. You getting enough to eat and everything? Eat? Sure, I get enough. I guess it's all food anyway, so if they gave me less, it wouldn't exactly be a hardship, you know what I mean? So how is your old man? Still the bad man of Bill Avenue? Evan was always impressed with brute strength and force. He had always admired my dad. Evan, you know my dad's been trying to help you, right? He's been talking to people and looking into things. He said, if that clerk survives, you might be facing 3 years in Massachusetts. But that's the optimistic scenario. If things don't clear up with your partner though, he's worried you might be looking at 20 years in Leavenworth now. Kansas isn't the worst place. My dad has a lot of connections there, guys from his Navy days. He'd prefer you do your time in Massachusetts, closer to family and friends. Now, I know you have issues with my cousin Danny, but my dad's loyalty is to his family. He wanted me to make sure you know he'll help as long as it doesn't create a conflict for him. He hopes you'll keep Danny out of this. You think my dad's right about me getting 3 years if I'm honest about Danny not being involved? You're not trying to mess with me, are you, Jake? I don't want to find out I've been played. I wouldn't mess with you, Evan. If someone did that to me, I'd take it personally. So do you think my dad can trust your word and you'll stop bringing Danny into this? Yeah, Jake, I was just messing around with his name. I won't mention my real partner though. Do you think that'll be a problem? It might be a problem for someone, but not for you, me, or my dad. I hope you get things straight when you're up in Massachusetts. Evan, you'll feel better without all that baggage. Bill and I shook hands with him, yelled at each other, and then they let us out. It was good to be out in the fresh air again. Cousin Danny surrendered to federal authorities 2 days after our visit with Evan. He was held for about 3 days and then released without any charges being filed. Evan was given 6 years up in Massachusetts, but his sentence was cut in half when it was reviewed 6 months later. Evan had been quite upset when the original sentence had been handed down, but friends of his were able to get him calmed down after things were explained to him about how sentences were often reviewed and altered after the trial. When things had gotten more settled and calm a couple of years later, Cousin Danny was shot dead trying to commit a bank robbery up in Watertown, New York. Uncle Don was heartbroken at the funeral, but he made a point of coming over to see my dad and thanking him again for all he did to try and help Danny after the trip to Niantic. I drove over to my Aunt Sue's to have dinner with Leo, Chloe, and her. She made some spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread and a nice green salad. I sat down at the supper table after we were all done and the table had been cleared and explained to everyone my plan for Leo to drive for me, making deliveries during the off-season. The first thing Leo said was that he wouldn't give up his caddy master job no matter what. Aunt Sue and Chloe looked at me as I patiently explained to Leo that there was no way I'd ever expect him to give that job up. I told him that this was something he might want to do when the golf course was closed to pick up a few extra bucks in case of a rainy day. Chloe was very enthusiastic, telling Leo that they'd need all the extra money for when the baby came. When I told Leo that Chloe could go with him whenever they wanted her to, that clinched it for him. We shook hands on it, and I told him I'd let him know when I needed him for his first delivery. Aunt Sue walked me to the door and gave me a big hug and a kiss. I hope Leo appreciates how you're always trying to look after his best interest, Jake. But I know that Chloe and I appreciate everything you try to do for him. Leo drove for me for 15 years before he went on disability from arthritis in his hands and back. He was the caddy master for only 1 more year, 1960, and then the position was done away with. When his little boy was born in the spring of 1960, he named him Johnny Ray Murphy, but everyone called him Jake and I was proud to stand up for him at his christening. Emily and I got married in the summer of 1960. We still go out to eat at restaurants all over the area, and she still likes her role-playing games, and I laugh as hard at them now as I did 46 years ago. We never managed to have children of our own, but we still always had them running around our house. You'd be surprised how many people appreciate a few days away from their children, unless you happen to be a parent yourself. My father passed away on September 7, 2000, the day after his 81st birthday. My mother had been dead for 8 years by then. They were married for 53 years and raised 4 children together. He was every bit as tough as I portrayed him here, but he was also more fun-loving than I showed. They came from a tougher generation, my parents. They took the blows that life handed them and kept getting back up and trying to move forward. If they were brutal and somewhat callous on the one hand, they more than made up for it with their fierce loyalty and willingness to share with others in their circle, be they friends or family. If you were family to my father, he was on your side no matter what. He might mete out his own stern reckoning on you afterwards, but he would do anything to protect those related through blood or marriage. I'll never be the man my father was, and that's a good thing as well as a bad thing. This country isn't producing citizens anymore who willingly make the sacrifices that my father did, both in WW2 and Korea. A significant part of his character was formed and set by what he saw and did while at war. I remember as a young child of 3 or 4 waking up many nights hearing my father screaming while in the throes of terrible nightmares as he relived the horrors that he and so many others endured. He spent 13 months in military hospitals as the Second World War was winding up. He'd gotten his left heel blown off by shrapnel at Anzio Beach and had held out after being wounded with 5 other GIs, eating rats and watching the maggots attacking the rotting flesh on his leg. When they were finally captured, luckily for them by Italians, they were held in a makeshift camp before being liberated after only 3 days of captivity. The military doctors told him he'd never walk without a limp again, and they tried to get him to take a disability retirement. He refused to quit and had several operations and grafts and was able in 1948 to walk without any noticeable limp when he went up before his final review board. I had too much respect for the total person my father was to sugarcoat things and try to make him some sympathetic character in this story. The story itself is mostly created from whole cloth, but my father, he's as real to me right now as he ever was when alive. God bless Dad. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.